Hello, everybody, and welcome back to The Views Expressed. Today, we're going to be doing something a little different on the podcast. I have a special guest, Rajashree Ghosh. She's with Ashland is United. But we are going to turn the tables a bit because I am the one, for the most part, who will be being interviewed during this session.
How's that for flipping of the script?
I don't know if I feel very comfortable with that.
No,
but,
it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. It's going to be a good chat between two women.
Yeah, there you go. And I think afterwards, I hope you will afford me the opportunity to let the people know a little bit about you and some of the important work that Ashland is United does, among some of the other good trouble that you make around town.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. So do you want me to get started?
Yeah, please get started. Fire away. Let's go.
So why don't we start with the names?
Okay.
So I was named because, they wanted to rhyme my name with another cousin. And my sister was born after, and her name rhymes right like mine. So there was nothing. The only thing that happened is that we're very, very close. Uh-huh. What about your name? Where does it originate from? And do you know the history and the significance of it?
Yeah, well, first off, I think that's very clever of your parents to kind of have a rhyming scheme. Yeah. I don't think my parents had something quite that elaborate in mind when they named me. I actually am a twin. So my parents had the tough job of naming two babies at the same time, boy and a girl. So for my name, they had... There are a couple different influences, but my mom was a history major at BU, very interested in different cultures around the world, and specifically when they had named us, they wanted us to take a lot of pride in our name, and she and Dad had done a lot of studying around different names from the African continent. Mm-hmm. So my family is historically African American. We've been in this country for a couple hundred years. Not really sure exactly what region we're from, but we do know that we're over here. So in some ways that gave my parents some leeway as to what kind of name they wanted to pick. And they settled upon a couple of different names for my brother and myself from different parts of the continent. My name appears actually in the Bible. Makeda or Makeda, sometimes Makeba, Ethiopian name, is in some versions of the Bible, the Queen of Sheba is referred to as such. Wow. And so my parents thought that she would be a good namesake for me. Makeda was very well known for her diplomatic skills, her intelligence, her poise, her grace. I don't think I've lived up to that name at all, but I'm proud to carry that name, and it's something that I do think about, and I'm grateful for because it's unusual. I growing up where I did, I don't think I had met anyone with that name, but as I make my travels across the country and talk with folks, I find that the name is rising in popularity, so that's a good thing.
Good.
Yeah.
But does it bother you if people can't pronounce it right?
No, not at all. It's I think we all have different names, and sometimes it takes a few times to memorize or to get folks' names said correctly. Whether they're quote unquote more common than others, it's fine.
Yeah, the commonality here. You were named after Queen of Sheba, and I have some royalty in the name. Raja means kingdom.
Yes.
So it's like the mothers are always thinking about names that are substantive. That the girls can latch onto that and become substance. Anyway, so. Tell me a little bit about what inspired you along the way. Was there an event? Was there a person? Was there an issue that somehow you say, okay, this is important and I'd like to work on this?
What inspired me along the way to
a career?
Or public life?
Public life, anything.
Fantastic. I have to say that, after giving Mom her nod, I have to say that a lot of my passion for public life and public service really comes from my late dad. My father was my role model, was my hero. He grew up in Harlem, very poor, not a lot of opportunities. Not only was one of the first folks in his family to go to college, but the first in his family to earn a PhD. And his brother, my uncle, ended up getting his MD. So, my grandmother was, that's a different discussion, but she was an incredible woman in her own right, given the circumstances. But my dad spent his life and devoted his life to making things better for everyone. And the way he did that was partially through education. He was an educator. He was a college professor. But he didn't just teach college students. He was, I was just telling someone this the other day, he ran one of the very first upward bound sites in the nation when President Johnson initialized that program at Brandeis University. And with kids from all different kinds of backgrounds, from different neighborhoods in Boston. And during one of the most volatile times in Boston history, had a whole bunch of kids and veterans actually working together and learning and growing together. He went on and did incredible things in the public service realm. Never ran for office himself, but always served the communities that he was in. One thing that I drew particular strength from and admiration, I admired him for, is his activism during the civil rights movement. My father went to an HBCU, North Carolina A&T, and he participated in the lunch counter sit-ins and the marches, and he was put in jail, and he had the dogs put on him, he had the hoses put on him. And to know that my dad had gone through that, so that not just black people in this country, but all people in this country could be treated equitably and fairly as human beings, is something that I carry to this day. And it inspires me to ask myself what I can do to make whatever communities I'm part of better.
What an amazing, amazing story. My dad was in the freedom struggle movement. So was my mom. In India, he participated in protest. He walked around protesting marches against the colonizers. But, we didn't have a civil rights issue in India, but there were lots of other forms of segregation. It's a very segmented society, so there's a lot of opposition and conflict. And I'm drawn to the civil rights movement because Gandhi also looked to that. And there's been so much cross-pollination of ideas in activism, in ideals. So I'm amazed, and I'm so inspired by the story that you spoke about your dad.
Well, thank you. And Martin Luther King drew a lot of inspiration from Gandhi and nonviolent resistance, and so there are a lot of parallels there. I didn't know that your family was involved.
Yeah, because they were refugees from Bangladesh into India. Oh, wow. So they went through a lot of hostile displacement, and then they were left with nothing, and then grew from there to what they were and gave us lives that we are proud of. So we always look back at our parents with pride, and then how do we take that forward? And you said the same thing.
Yes. So
I'm thankful for this opportunity.
That's the thing, making yourself aware of different issues.
Right.
I think I think it's incumbent upon all folks to try to be aware and do homework around issues that you may not be familiar with that do have to do with human rights and civil rights, because that makes us a stronger society on the whole. Right. And I think everyone needs to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that because it benefits everyone when you do.
Yes,
right?
exactly. I agree.
So.
The other thing I noticed in today's time, and I'm not on social media, I don't.
Well,
I understand.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
I understand the power it has.
Yeah.
But it also has an overload of information. So for instance, if I were to, if I didn't know you, I would just Google you and find some things
Sure.
about you, and I'll pretend, yes, I know her. But I really don't.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't. Where's the essence of the person unless I have this face-to-face and an opportunity like this?
Yeah.
So how do you keep true to yourself when there is such an overload of information?
Well, I think you've touched upon several interesting topics here. I think you're right in that, especially with the proliferation of social media and all different kinds of instantaneous electronic communication and connection, there are positive aspects of that, and there are extremely negative aspects of that as well. But to your point, I think, it's about making the effort.
Mm-hmm.
You can't Google somebody and proclaim to know them.
Right.
How do people usually get to know each other? Well, they have conversations like this, right?
Right.
They make connection, and you don't necessarily have to do that face to face. I have colleagues and friends that I deal with on a daily basis that I've grown quite close to, but have never met in person.
Really?
Never met in real life, but because we take that time to take that human connection, to listen to each other, to let each other know that we care about each other. Like that's what folks have to do. And I'll add to that I think the temptation nowadays is because we're all so busy.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much going on. And to your point, there's just like a
Delusion.
tsunami
Yeah.
of information, and some of it's valid and some of it's incorrect, and
Right.
in my mind that's kind of a call for all of us to sort of like slow down a little bit.
Yeah.
We're not physiologically constructed as human beings to deal with the speed of life as it is today.
Right.
And I think that probably was safe to say even 30 years ago, the speed of life 30 years ago, right? We have to give ourselves and each other some grace.
Yeah.
To slow down, get to know, connect. I think that's something that we need to, as a society, prioritize going
Right.
forward.
Some people would say that it's a great equalizer. At social media, it doesn't see who you are, where you are, but somehow to me, it exacerbates the divisions that are already there.
I will push back on the assertion that it's a quote unquote great equalizer because, being a technologist for most of my career, I can tell you right now, it most certainly is not. There are ways that you can, game the system, as it were, game the algorithm to make certain issues appear not as they are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the unfortunate piece about it. But on the other side, there's a tremendous amount of good that can and has come out of specifically social media and other means of electronic communication and connection. You don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, and you don't want to halt innovation. However, you want to make sure that you're not doing active harm to yourself or others when you're using these tools.
Right.
And that's, it's like, oh my goodness, you're gonna hinder innovation if you put too many regulations on these things. I think all of us who have lived through Web 1.0
Yeah.
and social media, now we've got AI, right?
Yep.
We should have learned some lessons from our first go around on some of this, on some of this internet stuff. Let's see how we do.
Yeah. I worry each day, when I get assignments from my students, how do I even say did they use ChatGPT? I
Sure.
don't know. I don't know.
Sure.
Did they get the lesson right?
Yeah.
I have no idea of finding that.
There are tools you can use to.
I know. So those tools are available.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it depends from person to person how you self-edit,
Indeed.
and you don't expect everybody to have that quality or have that poise where you're saying, okay, this is wrong. I should really think about this.
Yeah.
And that's hard to come by because people's capacities to think has become limited, more and more limited, because it's so full of all this information coming in.
I do agree that I do agree that people are not currently equipped, most people are not adequately equipped with the tools that are needed to be more analytical about the information that they are consuming. Mm-hmm. But I do think that we can educate people around that. I'm not, to be clear, like I do a lot of, I've given a lot of thought around AI, and I actually I train people how to use AI effectively, but I also do an ethics component to that as well.
Right.
Because you have to. Mm-hmm. I think there's, like any tool, I think there's a lot of great promise, and I think there's some real good that can come of the AI revolution. But if we collectively as a society don't understand the risks and start mitigating some of the risks, and especially put ethical guardrails up to decide, like, what are we using this for? What are we not using this for? If we don't come to a consensus on that sooner rather than later, I think there's going to be some very dangerous implications down the pike for that.
Absolutely. And that's the worry I have.
Yeah.
With bias and prejudice, how is AI handling that?
Well, there's a lot. There's a lot of literature now, on that. It wasn't a few years ago. Well, with predictive AI, a few years ago, there was a lot of information. Now with generative AI, we're getting an even, kind of like a different data set on like how these engines are
programmed,
how they're behaving and how, or rather how they're processing information, and how can you put up guardrails and prevention around these tools being used as active systems to support active systems of oppression and ignorance, right? And it's good to know that there are a lot of folks out there who are not only examining that issue, but offering some great insights on those issues as well.
That's good to know. So as a newly appointed select board member, you stay new forever now.
First off, I am not appointed. I am elected.
Why not? Oh, elected.
I have been elected by the good people of Ashland.
My mistake. That's completely.
And thank you, good people of Ashland, for electing me, I'll add.
So the newly elected select board member, you'll stay new for some time now.
I feel like I am.
Yeah. So with Ashland, of course, we're all rejoicing. Yeah, the demographics is changing. Yeah, there's change. But the thing is, it's majority white still. The loudest voices in most committees and boards are still very white. How do you navigate? How do you hold your own in those kinds of situations?
Well, I think the first thing that I'll say to that is I always approach my work with boards and committees as seeing folks as my fellow Ashlanders. We're sitting up at those tables, and I apologize, fellow select board members, if you're listening to this, but I'm going to speak on your behalf right now. We're all at that table because we want to do our best for the people of Ashland.
Right.
That's why we ran. That's why, hopefully, people agreed with what our visions were, and we got elected. So that's how I start with any and all of my interactions. And I have to give a big shout out to people who are appointed on appointed boards and who are like volunteers. I mean, select board technically volunteers as well. We don't pull down salaries. We're elected, but we're volunteers. Like we don't get paid for this.
Right.
Nobody does. Who on these boards and committees. It's not. In other towns, that's not necessarily true, but we don't. So from there, like that's the similarity that we share. And that's where I start. And I think that, I'd like to think that, that's where most of us start. And I can actually say that that is definitely true because with the interactions that I've had with my colleagues on select board and, other folks on other committees, that's how folks operate in this town. And I'm proud to say that, we're all just rolling up our sleeves trying to do the best for our friends and neighbors here in town. And I think if you have that sort of baseline understanding of why we're here and why we're doing that, even when I was going to say if I say when we have differences on opinions on how to achieve that, because we do. And that's good because that's what a healthy democracy is about, right? You don't want everybody in lockstep over every single issue, seeing things the same way. And in that regard, I think there's, a lot of diversity of opinion, a lot of diversity of approach. But when you get people from different backgrounds, I serve with people whose families have been here since the inception of the town. I serve with people who've gotten here just a couple of years ago on these committees. And that's a great mix.
Right.
You want everyone with all of those backgrounds and with all of that experience to be, looking forward to try to shape the Ashland that we all want to see.
Right.
So, I think that's what makes things so dynamic here in town, and that's why I enjoy doing what I do.
Yeah.
I'm still learning.
Yeah.
And to your point, like I'm kind of wet behind the ears and brand new at this stuff. This is the first elected office I've ever been involved in. I've never been elected before. I'm still learning the job. I'm doing my best. I want to, again, shout out all the members of the boards and committees that I've spoken with who have been really helpful and helping me to understand some of these issues. And a shout out to the citizens, too, that I get a chance to work with and represent. And, of course, my fellow select board colleagues. But, yeah, we're all here to serve you, period.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So let's do something fun.
Okay. I'm down for fun.
How about if you were organizing a dinner at home, who would you call? 3 people. Think of 3 people who may have passed on also will do, and why?
Historical figures?
Yeah.
Can we do historical figures, or is it just like people I know, or?
You take your pick.
Oh my goodness. Well, I was a philosophy major in undergrad. So,
and then you went into technology?
Yeah.
So philosophy lost you?
No, I carry philosophy with me all the time.
I hope so.
Not to not answer your question, the double negative there. But that's part of the reason why I think, as I've worked with technology for quite some time now, I started doing kind of web development, and now I'm kind of more of a product-based person. I do like product owner / business analysis for different platforms, and predominantly Salesforce platform at this point. That's where I've made my living for many years. Having a philosophy degree has been a real advantage, especially with dealing with emerging technologies. And it goes back for when we were talking about AI. Basically, what are some of the ethical issues around using these technologies? What are some of the questions as humans should we be asking ourselves about appropriate use? And also, maximizing good, and what does that mean? I've found that having a philosophy degree and having a technical background has been an incredible combination. And I actually really wish that more engineering and computer science schools would require students to take not just philosophy, like epistemology or whatever, but like honestly, like ethics classes around, some of the things that they're building, because I think it gives you a very different perspective of how you approach your work. I'm not saying that I have all the answers, and I'm not saying that I'm perfect, but at least having that degree helps me kind of think about things maybe a little differently than with somebody who may have just exclusively gotten like an engineering or a CS degree.
For sure.
Yeah. But yeah, so dinner party.
I'm thinking about food already.
Well, yeah, I know. Like, I'm actually thinking about the menu. I don't know. I think I'd just put like a whole bunch of names in a hat and draw randomly.
Yeah.
There are some U.S. presidents I'd love to speak with because I'd like to get some ideas from there. There are some philosophers I'd love to sit down with. I would like to meet my namesake and ask her some questions. Just people, a lot of historical figures, I think, and no shade on anyone current, but I think the saying, history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme, right? And I think there are a lot of lessons that we can learn from the past that we can apply to make a better future. So whoever I invite definitely will be folks who are no longer walking the earth, but who might be able to share some insights about what is occurring now.
Yeah. And some of the values that you might want to impart to your child. I mean, something that your legacy is about. What would that be?
Well, I mean, I think when I think of children, I think of like all children. I think of young people. And like what values do we want to impart to our young people? I think one of the central values, and people say this isn't a value, but like one of the values that I'd like to convey to our younger folks coming up is the sense of community, a sense that no person really is an island. We exist because we help each other to exist. We prosper because we help each other to prosper. Now, I'm not talking about that in a socialist or communist, context. I'm talking about
Disclaimer.
this. I'm getting out of political systems. I'm talking about human beings and human connections.
Yeah.
That is just a fact. Everyone sees the data about like how infants die or have failure to thrive if they are not held and just even held and so they know that they're safe, they know that they're wanted.
Right.
Like that's not just for little tiny babies, like that's for grown people as well. We all need to be part of a community. We all need to feel wanted, needed, share, and be able to share our gifts and talents with each other.
Yeah.
That's
so well said.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
So I'm actually, I want to have some more fun because I want to turn the tables a little bit back around here, Rajashree.
Yes.
So you, my friend, are very prominent here in the Ashland community.
Am I?
Yes, you are. And due to your work with so many things. But one of the organizations that I know you're extremely active with is Ashland is United. And speaking of building community, that's pretty much what you all do. How did you get involved in Ashland here with Ashland is United, and why are you doing all the incredible things that you're doing?
Yeah. So I joined Ashland is United in 2020, right before COVID hit us.
Oh my goodness.
And so we all went online. But Ashland is United has existed in town since 2017, and it was a sad event. Anti-Semitic signs were found in the Ashland High School, but post that, the whole town came together around a facilitated Courageous Conversation event, and it was attended by town administration, police chief, students, parents, residents alike. And then what came out of that was that there needs to be a group of people, town residents, who works with the town and builds a sense of community, builds a sense of acceptance and inclusivity. And that's how Ashlanders United came along. And when I joined in 2020, because people were feeling so isolated and so disconnected and didn't know what was going on with COVID and with social isolation, we decided to go online and reach out to people. But even before we could do that, George Floyd was murdered. Mm-hmm. And so the group then became one of the primary ones to develop what was called #StandUpAshland. And we did a video, I think this channel was involved in developing that.
Yeah, WACA was involved, very involved. They helped produce that video.
Yeah, and I was so touched that the community members stood up, sang, recited poems, said things, and so it was deeply, deeply touching. And so I thought, okay, if this group can do that, there's so much else that we can do together. And so the mission has been to strengthen bridges where there aren't any and to expose and educate people to new ideas. And so we've done several events. Recently, of course, we've done Ashland Flavors, which is about connecting through food. So we went to Spice Kitchen, which is at the Pond Street Plaza, which is an Indian restaurant, and we really talked about Indian food practices, some misnomers, like, everybody says, oh, you made curry because you're Indian. Curry means nothing to an Indian. It's almost like somebody saying, did you make sauce? Yeah. So we dealt with some of those. We talked about some of those, and it was such an intimate setting that people started talking to each other about, their visits to India, or what can be done about supporting a local business like Spice Kitchen. And they wanted more, so we're going to do this again, but this time with Mexican cuisine. One of our members is going to lead that. But really, through all these events, there have been, we did the Pride event this time, which is a huge challenge because many people who are part of the LGBTQI plus community are feeling threatened. Their rights are threatened. They are feeling scared. And so one of our members could not show up because she's really feeling scared. And so we wanted to stand up as allies for her. And we were so thankful that select board members like Hugh and Brandy Kinsman and Claudia Bennett showed up. Jack Lewis gave us such a wonderful speech. And so we were able to do that because our town manager provided us with that opportunity. And we did have police, circling the area because we didn't know we were threatened if we were going to be threatened. We did receive some messages online, and so we were being very careful. But we were thrilled that, little kids from Ashland High School participated in this event. And so we can have differences of opinion in this community, which is good, as you said. Yeah. But we also need to learn to sit with those differences and speak to each other, because that's where community and that's where belonging can happen. And that's what Ashlanders United is trying to promote.
Yeah, and you folks have been doing that, just like the programming that you've been talking about for many years. I'm thinking of the calendar. It's like almost like 10 years now. And so like there's a great catalog of community activism and actually really just kind of community building that you all have been doing with your events and spreading awareness and trying to bring people together, even if they have differences of opinion. I think a lot of the work that you do emphasizes that mutual respect piece, and that's important. Right. Speaking of bringing communities together, you are also involved with the comprehensive plan here in town. For people who are listening, what is that, and where are we in that process right now?
Sure. Yeah. So comprehensive plan is really a blueprint for an urban center, in our case, our town's plan for the next 10 years. Where do we want to be? What do we want in our community? And it's like a house, and if you don't have a blueprint, you don't have a building. Similarly, you can't build a community without a vision. And so this comprehensive plan looks at different elements in town. So for instance, economic development, infrastructure, historical and cultural aspects, open space and recreation, sustainability, all these elements, and we're building a plan based on public engagement and also inputs from 29 members who make up the steering committee. These 29 members come from different committees and boards, as well as precincts in town. So each time we've had public engagement opportunities, these 29 members have gone out into the community and sought out inputs from community members. So Ashland community members have been part and parcel of this process. We are now in phase 4, almost towards the end of this planning process.
Is phase 4 what's the final phase?
So basically, a plan would be written, a document will be provided. Our consultants are James Golson and Co. And they're helping us, shepherding us and guiding us through the process. A plan will be made available. It will be presented to the select board and planning board, and once it's approved by the public and by the planning board, it's good to go. It calls the community into action.
And we're off to the races.
We're off to the races.
My goodness. Well,
Yeah.
If people want to find out more information about the comprehensive plan and Ashland United, let's take one at a time. First, comprehensive plan. Who can they talk to?
They can write to the comprehensive plan steering committee at any time. So I'm the co-chair, and my partner in crime is Stacy Grant Lewis.
Yes.
So either one of us will be responding to that email. And you can look up the town website for the comprehensive plan tab. You can also look up the comprehensive plan website that has been developed by our consultants, and reach us at any time, and we're happy to. You can also attend our meetings. They're hybrid, and you can join on Zoom, or you can be present at the meeting.
And those meetings are listed on the town website.
They're posted.
They're posted, so
Yeah.
folks can attend at their convenience.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to add that as well.
Yes.
So that's a great resource. Separate and apart from that,
Yes.
if people want to get more involved with Ashland is United or find out when the next event is,
Yeah.
like who can they contact?
So they can write to ashlandisunited@gmail.com, and write to us. Tell us what you want to see happen in the community. If you want to join us as volunteers, absolutely. We would love to have more input, it'll be good to have more and more people join in this activity, because the more people are involved, the more you know that this community is going to do well.
Well, and again, it just kind of circles back to building community and getting to know each other and building that mutual respect.
Absolutely.
Rajashree, Ghosh, it has been a pleasure being interviewed by you.
Wonderful. I enjoyed myself. This was fun.
Oh, it was a lot of fun. And
Yeah.
I want to thank our listeners and our viewers for hanging out for this very special edition of The Views Expressed. Yet another Community Affairs podcast produced by WACA-TV right here in Ashland, Massachusetts. Tune in again and hear more about what's going on in your community right here in this feed. Thanks for joining us, and we hope that you come around and listen to us again soon.
Thank you.